Okay, folks, so when we last left off, we had successfully downloaded our MPD crime stats data, and we were now looking at this pretty dense and sort of unintelligible HTML file. And so this is the point actually where, having determined that this is the page that we want to scrape, we actually want to go back to our web browser, because our web browser has much better tools for kind of examining what the unique features are that we're going to use to actually pull the data that we're looking for out of this file. So you may remember we've looked at this briefly before in class, but we're going to use, I'm going to do a right click here, and I'm going to use the inspect feature here. And what this is going to do is it's going to take me kind of straight to whatever content I highlighted when I selected it, but you can see how in the right-hand pane here, I can kind of start going through and seeing what the structure is, okay? So the Manhattan thing is here, obviously the link is down here, but I can see that this is wrapped in a larger structure, which is this list item. So as I scroll over each individual list item, you can see how it's highlighting on the left-hand side. And if I go up one level, I see how this span 6, right, is actually all of Manhattan South. And if I go over this next span 6, it's all of Manhattan South, or North, right? And in each case, as I come down here, it's a little bit distorted by the resizing, right? I can start to see, okay, there's all of Brooklyn, and oh, there's another span 6. So in this case, the first thing that I'm going to look for, what Beautiful Soup does, again, is similar to how our dictionary reader takes our sort of raw data and transforms it so that it's easier to deal with. We're going to use Beautiful Soup to do a similar type of transformation on our HTML file so that we can use the special recipes that it has for grabbing bits of the page based on identifiers like this one, which is, in our case, we're going to use the class span 6 as our starting point. Now, might there be things that are not my data on here that say span 6? Possibly. But it seems a little unlikely. And if worse comes to worse, we'll deal with that as we encounter it, right? So just like all of the things that we've seen, this kind of work is very trial and error, right? We kind of look at things, we try something out, we see how it works. If it doesn't work, we try something else. There's no kind of one size fits all here. So it's always a bit of a trial and error process. So what I'm going to do is come back to my Python scraper here, come back to my New York Stats scraper, and I'm going to start by converting my file that I'm using I'm going to use the Beautiful Soup recipe on it to get that conversion that's going to give me some of the nice recipes for pulling data out of it. So to do this, as always, I'm going to create a new variable, and I'm going to call this crime stats soup. Right? I like to maintain the metaphor here. And so what I will do, the command here is actually called Beautiful Soup. It's the only time that I'm going to use it directly. And then I say open, right? Because I want to open, and I want to open this file. Okay? So this is actually the same open command that we've used previously, but we're using it as an ingredient to the Beautiful Soup recipe. Okay, so let's see how this goes. Again, we want to keep testing. Okay, so this is a warning. This isn't actually a failure. And it says no parser was explicitly designed, so I'm using the best available HTML parser, LXML, blah, blah, blah. This usually isn't a problem. Different virtual environment, Beautiful Soup your markup. So this is actually telling us, hey, there's a problem, or hey, there's something you could be doing better, and here's how to fix it. And so what they're recommending is that I put in a secondary argument, which is actually this LXML parameter. So, LXML parameter, okay? And so basically what that's saying is it's almost giving it something like a file extension. So in the same way that a file extension is the clue to our computer, what type of program, how it should interpret a given file, that second ingredient that we're giving it is saying, look, I'm giving you a file, and by the way, this is the interpreter that you should use. So it's almost like an extension. So let's try this again, just to make sure we've solved that. And so again, no news is good news. So The only real way for me to see if this is doing kind of what I want it to be doing is to start looking for things. Now, Beautiful Soup has a lot of documentation that you can look at with the different kinds of methods that it has for finding different pieces of web data or data within a web page. Obviously, I've done a little pre-reporting on this, and so I am going to go sort of straight to the chase here. And the method that I'm going to use to do that is I'm going to say, let's see, you call this crime, I'll call this soup data equals, and now I'm going to use a method called find all, which is part of the Beautiful Soup, which is again a Beautiful Soup recipe. And so I'm going to do find all, and what I'm going to look for is class equals span 6. Now, I want to point something out here, and I have a feeling that I need to do, oh yeah, crime stat soup. Let's see if I did this right. Crime stats soup dot find all. Okay, so what I'm saying is into the variable soup data, I want you to put the results of running the find all on crime stat soup. Now, the class equals span 6, remember, I got actually from here, right? From the contents of my HTML. So there's no magic there. That's just what I'm looking for. Now, my first instinct would be to use class, but we notice that class is a reserved word in Python, right? It's turning blue. So I can't just use that. So as I looked up in the documentation, it turns out that they understand this limitation. And so they've created a tweaked version where if I write class underscore, it will accomplish the same thing, but it gets around the problem of having class itself be a reserved word in Python. And so the only way that I'm going to be able to kind of see if this is working is I'm going to say for, now I know that because I'm using a find all, it's going to make a list, right? So again, I can say for item in soup data, right? Because my for in always knows it only works if the second thing is a list, and then again, whatever the first variable name is, it's just going to say that's an item. So for now, I'm just going to try printing the item and see what happens. Okay, so I got some stuff, right? That's sort of what I was going for. And it's a little hard for me to tell, so I just wanted to spit this out onto the terminal to kind of see if it was working. I might actually, what I sometimes do here is I also print a second message so I can tell where the separation between items is when they kind of look the same. So I'm going to run this one more time. Okay, and so now I can see, yeah, that actually, so here's a given chunk, right? It's between break messages, it's between the output messages. And obviously I could have put anything in that message, but here is my div span 6, right? So now the question is, where is the data that I want? And it's in these href tags. Now I'm going to prioritize and say that I actually only want the things that have an Excel, that are an Excel file. Big surprise, we're going to actually do that part of the task with a regular expression. But before we get there, what I want to do is I want to get actually the contents of this, right? So I need to get each one of these is a list item, right, as an li tag, which in it has some anchor tags, okay? And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, for every one of these items, I want to find every anchor tag that's part of a list item tag, I want to find that as well. And so I can do this again. There's another recipe in Beautiful Soup that lets us do this. And the recipe that lets us do this is called select. Okay, so in select, I can actually, I'm going to get rid of this print statement. Here, let me just start over here. So I'm going to say, first of all, I need a variable, right? Because I want something to put the result of this into. So I'm going to call this link contents. I'm not sure if that's precisely what it's going to be, but that's what I'm going for overall. And it's going to be item, so it's going to be for each one of these things, right? Because this was item. I want to select list item A. So this is actually a particular feature of, again, you know, this select recipe is part of the Beautiful Soup library. So it works however the writer of that library decided that it would. And what it lets us do is it lets us string together multiple tags to say, the way I would interpret this is for every list item, give me the anchor tags within it, okay? And so hopefully what this should give me is link contents should itself, again, be a list, because I'm going to be grabbing all of them. And I'm hoping that when I go through that list, I'm going to get basically just the anchor tags themselves, right? Just this A, href equals, et cetera, et cetera. So again, in order to go through that list, I'm going to have to do another for loop, right? So hopefully you can see, like, it's pretty much it's for loops all the way down. And so for link in link contents, okay, I'm now going to do, so now I'm going to say, well, let me just see, you know, what the subset is there. So I'm going to say print link and see what I get. Oops, so I didn't get, because that's that's weird. I've never seen that before. I had an extra equal sign in there and it didn't throw an error. Okay, so this is getting much closer. So what I can see now is that each link is its own item, is its own piece of the list, because it's printing this break message after every single URL. So this is close to what I want, except I don't actually want the whole thing. I really just want this piece. And the way that I can get that is actually through square brackets. And again, this is all stuff that I'm getting out of the documentation for Beautiful Soup. Okay, so again, I'm sort of handing this to you all, but this is stuff that, you know, basically I went through and I read the recipe book like I would read a cookbook to figure out which ones had the pieces that I was looking for. So hopefully that href thing will get me what I'm after, and there we go. So I'm really close now, right? I've got just the raw links. You can see they're not complete links, but I'm not too worried about that, right? Because obviously the base URL is going to be probably the same as this nyc.gov, something like that. I would obviously test one out before I would use it. Now, the thing that I want to eliminate, however, I want to do a few things, right? First of all, I want to isolate just the ones that have XLSX. And then ultimately I want to write them to a file, right? I don't want to just like keep spitting them out to the terminal. That's not going to do me much good. Obviously, writing to a file we're pretty comfortable with at this point. So I'm going to focus instead on how do I distinguish between the Excel file and the PDF file. Well, as I foreshadowed earlier, this is going to involve a regular expression, right? Because the links are, you know, they share some similarities, but ultimately they could have basically anything in front. All I care about is whether it's an XLSX. So when we come back, I'm going to show you how the sort of steps that we need to take to use a regular expression within Python. And then from there, we're going to isolate those XLSX files and links, and then we're going to write them to a file. So I'll see you in a minute.